we did the first session where we created, just used the template Spring MVC application, and we created a fully functioning Spring MVC application with a bit of modifications, and we got to know a few things about the moving pieces. Now, you may be thinking, well, that's not too interesting, not particularly REST-like, but that actually has all the makings of what REST is, since REST is just HTTP. But we're going to get a little bit more deeply in this session into the use of Spring MVC for building a REST application. So we're in session 2, and we're going to do a few things. We'll jump right into it and go back to the 3 files that we had created in the first session. And it gets a little bit more interesting, I promise. So let's take a look. I'm going to go back to my REST controller. And you'll see that I had within the controller, I had a request mapping, which translated to a method called home, which served up the view, which was a JSP. Now, in REST, as what we want to do is serve essentially a headless service as that represents a resource, and allow people to go and fetch the resource or interact with it in interesting ways. So that's what we'll do. So I just copied that over, and I'll show you how to modify from the template and turn it into a genuine REST service. So create a REST service. And you'll see, just based on the approach that I'm taking, that I'm going to refer to 2 things. Break it down into something simple, and really just copy from templates as far as you can. So try to be super lazy. Try to do as little work as possible, because that way the additional benefit is that you're less likely to get things wrong. So let's break this down. We have a request mapping that gives us a URL, which started with /. Let me give it something more meaningful like UX_REST. Interestingly, this will be added on to our base URL for the application. We'll leave the method as HTTP GET. We will give it a different name. So we will call it UX_REST is as good a name as any, but keep in mind that these 2 are really not related. This could be anything. This is just an annotation for this particular method. We will use the same things as before. Let's get rid of this date business, and I could just return a hard-coded string. Now, this is conceptually what I want, but it's not going to work, because we said in this previous view, or this previous method, in this request mapping for /, that it returned the name of the view which was going to be served, and that's the default behavior. In a REST service, I am not really returning a rendered view. What I'm doing instead is sending back a value which will be consumed and represented in a view, presumably somewhere else. So that means I have to do something else, and I have a few hints in my document over here. In order to do the REST mapping, I actually have to, in addition to copying this, I want to add a response body, and it says something about updating the import statements. Let me tell you what that is. What I do is I annotate this with what else? But it's not going to be found. I happen to know what this was, but really what I'm doing is that I am going to do an import of response body, and let's see where that comes from. I'll give you a hint. It comes from an annotation, and in keeping with my idea of doing as little work as possible, I'm just going to copy over these annotations and see what presents itself with the autocomplete, and there you go. Response body happens to be available as an annotation. Simple as that. So what I did here was that I added a response body annotation, and to my request mapping method, I called it something meaningful, saying that at least to start with, we are going to make this a REST response. And now all of a sudden, I probably don't need these locales and models. So what do you say we get rid of them? And this logger all of a sudden is less meaningful as well since I deleted that. So I'm just going to say, hey, I just ran the REST service. Although it doesn't look like much of a REST service, but it's to begin with, it will give us a resource, which is this string called hi, and I should be able to access it with REST, and we even give it a URL that has the word REST in it, so it's pretty cool. So let me go in and do a run install again. And now the key is once, and presuming this builds, I should be able to add /UXREST to my URL that I had before. And then it should actually give me this return value of hi, rather than serving the view which is from the home JSP. So it says complete. And if I go back to my REST API page, what is my URL? It was /UXREST. That's a little unfortunate. I should have called it something else, but trust me on this. In fact, we'll change it. But UXREST/UXREST gets me where I want to go. Let me change this request mapping to something like REST API. And we'll go a little bit further just to prove to you that I'm not doing anything tricky. So Maven install. And once it completes, let's take a look at what our next steps are going to be. We want to update the import statement, which we did. We added a response body, and we tested it to demonstrate that it actually worked. And I changed my UXREST/UXREST to the URL will be UXREST/REST API. And assuming this completed, I am going to go. What's happening here? Do I have it down now? There it is. And I should get exactly the same thing. I should have changed that hi to something else, but there you go. So what's my next step? Now I want to be able to pass something in and extract a parameter from what I pass in and display that parameter. Not particularly different, but what I'm going to demonstrate is that I can pass in an HTTP servlet called request. Let me fetch a parameter from it. What's my error? Let me get a string, let's call it name, equals a request dot, what are my options? Let's say get parameter, and we'll call it name. We'll do two things. I will concatenate this to my logger, and I will concatenate it to my return value. So we go a little bit further. I'll do the same thing. Do the install to the server, and once it's complete, we're going to get a little bit more ambitious here, but we are at step 2. And let's see if this works. Then what I should be able to do is add a parameter here that says name equals something. And there you go. So we successfully passed in a parameter to my REST API and had a display. Still nothing particularly impressive here, but we're going to get to the impressive stuff next. So this is what we're doing. My problem is that so far I was returning a string from my REST method, and that's just not impressive. Now, I could, of course, have a serialized view of JSON or XML in my string, but I really don't want to do that. What I want to do is to have these complex objects that are returned from my REST API. So that's actually what we're going to do next. So we're going to create a base object class of something interesting. I'm going to create a new class in my ComCSC UX REST package. And I'm going to call it, let's say, when we think of REST resources, we think of nouns. So things like types of groceries or policies or fruits, and that's a good one. So we'll just call it, my class name is fruit. And I will give it a few attributes, but let's take a quick look. So under the package, I'm going to create a fruit class, finish, and Eclipse should build that class for me. We'll see it over here, and it opened it. Let's give this class a few attributes. We'll give it a name, and that should sound familiar because that was the parameter that we were passing in. And just for completeness, we'll give it a type as well. And not wanting to write a lot of code, I am going to go into my code generator and ask it to generate getters and setters. And I will do it for the two attributes that I created. And if things go well, yeah, there we are. So we have getters and setters, and so I have a first class Java object, and my objective is to be able to instantiate and return a type of fruit from my REST API. So my resource in REST is a fruit. I am going to do something more interesting with this, of course. I am going to create a new instance of fruit. So fruit. And I am going to set some values. So what are my setters available to me? Set name. I am going to set it to, well, pretty cool, just name. And fruit dot set type. Hey, where'd that go? Now, unfortunately, I don't really have a type available to me, so I'm just going to hard code it. I didn't bother to pass it in or otherwise drive it, but let's hard code it for now. Let's say citrus. Now, I'm getting very close to being able to return something, a resource from my REST API method. So first thing is, what I really want to do is return a fruit from here. And because I am returning a fruit, I don't want to return the string anymore. So I'll say return the fruit. And you think on the face of it that this would work. Unfortunately, it won't. And let me show you. I like seeing things fail. And then sometimes the error messages give me some hints about what's going on. So I am going to do the install, which does a build and install. Doesn't take very long at all. And so the deploy worked, and if I go over here, I'll see this ugly message, which, although scary looking, actually gives me some interesting information. The problem is that it says the resource identified by the request is only capable of generating responses with characteristics not acceptable. What does that mean? According to the request headers. What that means is that I have a type coming back to me. And the point is I'm trying to return an object, and HTTP doesn't know what my Java class of the type fruit actually is. So here's this beautiful thing about Spring MVC that it's going to help me by serializing my response body from my complex type if I just give the means to do so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer to my list of instructions, and I will create a Jackson dependency. And so Jackson is a Java to JSON mapper mechanism. And if I simply make Jackson available to Spring MVC, it will automatically convert this to JSON, and that's most excellent. So I don't bother trying to memorize things too much. Google is your friend. So if I just go to Google and ask it, where can I find the Jackson Maven dependency? And you'll see that I've done this before, and I didn't quite remember it. So I go to this link, and I'm just going to get this this latest one. I think I just click this, and there you go. It has this handy dependency tag, which I can put into my Maven file, which is the POM file that I first pointed to in session 1. I said that we would be changing 3 files, and we changed this one, and we can actually dismiss it. I'm not really interested in the JSP anymore, which is my view in Spring MVC. But I am interested now in the POM, and you'll see that the POM we said contains dependencies. There's aspect-j, there's logging, and somewhere in the middle, I can just drop in this dependency and be nice about it, and put in a comment. And because Jackson is not a part of Spring, I'm actually fairly confident that by putting in the latest version, it should just work. So that's genuinely all there is to it. Whereas it failed earlier because I was returning a type that HTTP wouldn't like, I should be able to now do an install. And the install is going to do 2 things right now. It's going to go and grab the Jackson mapper library and make it available to my project. And then when I run this, with no additional change to my controller method code, I should see better results. I should see something more interesting than that error message. So the build succeeded. Now it's installing it to my application server, I think. Let's see, is it still failing? Oh, something happened. There you go. So, yeah. So all of a sudden, by changing 0 code but just making the Jackson dependency available, I got a fruit whose name is Billy and who's a citrus. Now, it may make more sense, and I'll prove this, that this is genuinely dynamic data being passed from my REST client to my REST API and being served as a RESTful response by changing this to orange or grapefruit or something. So to recap, what we did in the second session is that we took the standard template and Spring MVC project. We created a new request mapping and gave it a response body. We updated the import statement to support the response body. This is what we're talking about. Look at this, not a lot of code here. And then we passed in an HTTP servlet request parameter, extract the parameter from the request, passed it into a new instance of a complex Java object, and returned that object, and allowed Jackson, which we placed into the class path, to do the mapping for us on behalf of Spring MVC, and we got this nicely presented JSON response. And that's the conclusion of this session. A little bit longer than I anticipated, but should be a good way to build up on the previous session. In the next session, we're going to build on this a little bit further and talk about testing. Thank you.